The economic foundation of Germany is currently facing a systemic transformation that signals the potential end of its multi-decade industrial dominance. Once celebrated as the manufacturing heart of Europe, the nation is struggling with a set of structural vulnerabilities that appear increasingly irreversible. The reputation for engineering excellence and industrial stability is no longer sufficient to sustain growth in a rapidly shifting global landscape. Current economic data suggests that the challenges facing the German model are not merely cyclical, but are the result of deep-seated strategic miscalculations. Three primary factors have converged to create a scenario where traditional strengths have transformed into critical weaknesses. The first major structural failure lies in the extreme reliance on the Chinese market, a strategy that prioritized short-term corporate profits over long-term geopolitical sovereignty. Throughout the past 2 decades, the German automotive industry restructured its entire business architecture around the assumption of indefinite Chinese demand. By 2021, major manufacturers like Volkswagen were selling more vehicles in China than in their European and North American markets combined. This concentration of revenue meant that nearly 40% of the profits for Germany's largest automakers were derived from a single foreign jurisdiction. The strategic oversight occurred when German boards failed to recognize that a customer providing the majority of profit eventually functions more like a landlord than a client. As China successfully moved from assembling imported parts to engineering its own superior technology, the relationship shifted from synergy to direct competition. The rapid rise of domestic Chinese electric vehicle manufacturers has fundamentally disrupted the premium positioning of German brands. Companies like BYD achieved massive scale and cost advantages, producing vehicles that are significantly more affordable and technologically advanced than their German counterparts. By 2024, the market share for German vehicles in China began a sharp and accelerating decline as domestic competitors took control of the electric transition. The resulting pressure has forced historic industrial icons to consider factory closures on German soil for the first time in nearly 9 decades. These potential closures represent more than just corporate downsizing. They indicate the collapse of the strategic premise upon which German industrial identity was built. The second fatal error involves a fundamental miscalculation in energy policy, often referred to as the Energiewende. Following the 2011 Fukushima disaster, the German government made a politically motivated decision to accelerate the shutdown of its entire nuclear power infrastructure. This decision was made despite Germany's lack of seismic risks and its possession of some of the most advanced nuclear facilities in the world. The ambitious goal was to replace nuclear and coal with renewable sources at a pace never before attempted by a major industrial economy. However, the reality of the transition has led to some of the highest electricity prices in the industrialized world. Industrial electricity costs have reached levels that make heavy manufacturing structurally uncompetitive on the global stage. The loss of cheap, reliable baseload power created a dangerous dependency on natural gas imports, primarily from the Russian Federation. Despite explicit warnings from neighboring states and geopolitical allies, Germany proceeded with projects like Nord Stream 2, deepening its reliance on a single volatile supplier. When geopolitical tensions led to the severance of this energy supply in 2022, the immediate increase in input costs crippled energy-intensive sectors such as chemicals, steel, and glass. The largest chemical companies have since begun shifting production capacity to regions with lower energy costs and more favorable subsidy environments, such as the United States and China. Even more paradoxical was the increased reliance on lignite coal to fill the energy gap, resulting in higher carbon emissions despite the green objectives of the policy. The energy transition effectively prioritized ideological consistency over the practical requirements of a manufacturing-based economy. The third and perhaps most inevitable challenge is the demographic collapse currently unfolding within the German labor market. The social welfare model established by Otto von Bismarck in the late 19th century was designed for a society with a completely different population structure. Original pension systems were funded by a large base of young workers supporting a small number of retirees who rarely lived beyond the eligibility age. Modern medical advances and falling birth rates have completely inverted this population pyramid, creating a scenario where there are now more citizens over 60 than under 30. Germany's fertility rate has remained consistently below the replacement level for decades, leading to a shrinking working-age population. Projections indicate that by 2030, approximately 7 million workers will have exited the labor force, shifting from contributors to recipients of state support. This demographic shift creates a simultaneous crisis of labor shortages, rising pension obligations, and escalating healthcare costs. The economy currently faces nearly 2 million unfilled job vacancies, even as growth stagnates and unemployment pressures mount in specific sectors. Attempts to mitigate this through immigration have faced significant hurdles due to complex bureaucracy and a lack of streamlined processes for recognizing foreign professional credentials. Unlike other developed nations that actively compete for global talent in software and specialized engineering, Germany's administrative barriers have slowed the integration of high-skilled migrants. The convergence of these three factors, market overdependence, energy uncompetitiveness, and demographic decline, creates a feedback loop of structural decay. Profits lost in China cannot be used to fund the expensive energy transition, and the lack of skilled labor prevents the innovation necessary to regain a competitive edge. The constitutional debt brake, once a symbol of fiscal prudence, now acts as a legal barrier to the massive public investment required to overhaul national infrastructure. Germany is no longer facing a temporary recession, but a fundamental challenge to the survival of its post-war economic model. The assumption that past success automatically guarantees future stability has proven to be a costly illusion. Historical precedents suggest that when a nation's core industrial foundations begin to shift, the window for managed reform is often smaller than anticipated. The current situation demands a level of political courage and structural reorganization that goes beyond traditional policy adjustments. Failure to address these converging crises risks transforming Europe's strongest economy into a cautionary tale of institutional inertia. According to the editor's opinion, the situation in Germany serves as a profound warning about the dangers of strategic complacency in a rapidly evolving world. It appears that the very structures that made the country an economic powerhouse in the 20th century have become the rigid chains preventing its adaptation to the 21st century. The transition from a customer-led growth model in China to a competitor-driven reality was predictable, yet ignored in favor of quarterly dividends. Furthermore, the energy policy represents a classic case of prioritizing domestic political optics over the hard realities of industrial physics and geopolitical risk. The demographic crisis is perhaps the most scary element, as it is a slow-motion disaster that was mathematically certain decades ago, yet remained unaddressed by successive administrations. The editor believes that Germany's current struggle is a reflection of a broader Western malaise, where the comfort of the present is consistently traded for the viability of the future. There is a palpable sense that the Made in Germany brand is being hollowed out by a lack of visionary leadership and an over-reliance on legacy systems. If the heart of Europe's economy continues to falter, the geopolitical and economic consequences will be felt far beyond the borders of Berlin. Ultimately, the German case proves that no amount of historical prestige can protect an economy that refuses to align its ideology with the objective demands of global competition.